Cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic. People, this the intro. Sacramento, California, born and raised. And Antelope is where I spend most of my days. Talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down. Bear down.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. Like always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you also follow me on all my social media platforms to stay connected with all Keek on the Mic news. So, Bears fans, after the conclusion of the 2023 NFL Draft, Ryan Poles was pleased with the haul of players he got to help fix this football team. Obviously, everyone knows that the Chicago Bears are a rebuilding football team with a whole lot of holes to fill. And overall, I was also pleased as a Bears fan that Ryan Poles addressed a lot of needs on this roster. He addressed the offensive line by adding Darnell Wright. He addressed the defensive tackle position by adding, I think, at least two studs that can probably play right away. And he even added some premium positions at cornerback by adding two corners in the 2023 NFL Draft. So overall, I think I can see why Ryan Poles and I can see why Bears fans should be pleased with the haul of players that he added to this rebuilding roster. The big issue now is, and this is what everyone is talking about on social media right now, so I had to come on here and talk about this today, is the big issue is that the Chicago Bears still have a glaring need and a glaring hole at the edge rusher position. Ryan Poles did not add one single edge rusher in this 2023 NFL Draft. He opted to just take those three defensive tackles and work on the interior pass rush, which is totally fine. I'm not here trying to dog Ryan Poles saying that it was a mistake that he didn't take an edge rusher. I just want to state the obvious that Ryan Poles did not select an edge rusher, right? So now that is still a glaring need for the Chicago Bears roster, because I understand that the interior pass rush, we also struggle, in the interior as well to get pressure, but it's also important that we address the outside as well at that edge position, right? So we still have a huge need at the edge rusher position. And when Ryan Poles was questioned about it from Chicago Bears reporters, this is what he had to say about it. I think he wants to fix everything immediately, but it's got to work the right way. The right players have to be there that fit our scheme. We can't fix everything at a high level in one swoop. And you know what, Bears fans? Ryan Poles is absolutely right. The Bears weren't going to fix everything in two off seasons under Ryan Poles. He understood that when he took this position, that it was going to take more than a couple off seasons to really fix things and make sure things are going in the right direction. And I can strongly say that already in two off seasons, the Bears roster is in the right direction. We feel like we have our quarterback in Justin Fields. Obviously, you have weapons around him and Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore, right, Chase Claypool, Cole Kmet. Obviously, you got the secondary figured out with Jaquan Brisker, right, Kyler Gordon. So overall, when you look at the core players on this football team, I am pleased what Ryan Poles was able to do with this roster so far, considering where it all started, right? Because you have to consider that last season was all about dumping older veterans and making sure all that big cap money was taken care of, right? Getting rid of those big contracts. And that's what Ryan Poles' goal was last year. This year was his first offseason where he was able to spend a little bit and add guys like Tremaine Edmonds, right? Add guys like TJ Edwards, add guys like Nate Davis, right? Even add guys like DJ Moore. So obviously the roster is in the right direction. So I do understand in that little statement that I just shared with you guys where he is coming from, because we all understand that the Bears are still possibly years away. I think they are a better football team right now, but I think we still may be maybe a year or two, maybe even 3 years out for hopefully being a true contender, not only in the NFC, but then in the NFL as well. So we all understand that this roster has a lot of holes to fill. And even though Ryan Poles did not add an edge rusher in this year's draft, I'm still confident that he will add the right player at the edge position, players that fit our scheme and culture, because that's another thing that goes along with this. Ryan Poles wants to add guys that are not only good football players, guys that are good character guys as well. There are certain players that they're looking to add to this roster. So I can respect that Ryan Poles not going to just to add, right? If that guy's good, he's not just going to add him. He wants to make sure they're good football players and also good character guys as well, because he has a good culture going on. He's building a good culture and good football team here, inside and out. But all in all, the Bears do need to add a couple of edge rushers before the season starts, in my personal opinion. So basically what I wanted to go over today on the podcast, I wanted to go over 5 options at the edge rusher position that can basically fill the void for the Chicago Bears roster. And currently, as it stands, Travis Gibson and Dominique Robinson are the only defensive ends returning to the Chicago Bears this season. Obviously, Gibson had 3 sacks last year. Gibson had a really good first year for the Chicago Bears, but then his play has kind of been declining ever since. And then obviously, Dominique Robinson in his rookie year had a sack and a half. And I'm kind of excited to see what Dominique Robinson does this season in year 2. I feel like he's a high upside guy. I think we understood that he needs to be developed a little bit more. But all in all, at the moment, these guys are not starting material. So you do need to add some guys to the roster that can hopefully come in and start right away and give you a little bit more production, because having 3 sacks and a sack and a half is not going to cut it on the edge. So you definitely need to add a little bit more to that position. So let's go over 5 options that the Bears could consider bringing into Chicago and trying to fill that void at the edge position. And obviously, as I'm going through this, make sure you're following along. Let me know if you agree with the people that are on this list, and give me some names that you would like to see the Bears consider in terms of that edge position. Number 1 on my list is Leonard Floyd. Can Floyd have a reunion in Chicago? Obviously, in 2016, the Chicago Bears selected Leonard Floyd out of Georgia with the 9th overall pick. He spent 4 seasons in Chicago. Obviously, things did not really work out in Chicago. He ended up signing with the Los Angeles Rams. But as it stands right now, Leonard Floyd is currently one of the best edge rushers on the market right now. And after leaving Chicago, like I just mentioned, and signing with the Los Angeles Rams, to me, Leonard Floyd had a really good 3-year stint, which obviously it's pretty easy to do when you're playing alongside Aaron Donald. In 3 years, Leonard Floyd notched 29 sacks and started every single game. This season, he had 9 sacks and a career-high 22 quarterback hits. He is 30 years old now, but I wouldn't mind seeing a reunion with Leonard Floyd. Obviously, this is a guy that's a veteran now that can come in right away. And I think be productive for the Chicago Bears defensive line, maybe a little 2-year deal to bring him back to Chicago. But all in all, you do have to kind of consider that when he went to the Rams, he was playing alongside Aaron Donald. The Chicago Bears currently don't have an Aaron Donald, so that would be my only concern. But all in all, Leonard Floyd would be a solid option for Ryan Poles and Chicago Bears to consider. Maybe bringing him in and then bringing him back to Chicago. So would you guys like to see Leonard Floyd back with the Chicago Bears? Let me know down below in the comment section. Player number 2 on my list, and this is the player that I've been talking about all offseason long, and that is Yannick Nagy. Nagy is coming off a 9.5 sack season and has recorded at least 8 sacks in each of his last 7 seasons. And this guy can absolutely get after the quarterback. And I already know what you guys are going to say in the comment section. Well, Keek, he struggles against the run. He's a liability against the run. I totally understand that, but this guy is a true pass rushing specialist. This is a guy that knows how to get after the quarterback, and that's what we need. I know a lot of people talk about the sacks, but we need guys that are able to also create those quarterback pressures, get the quarterback hits as well. It's not always about the sacks. I know people are so crazy about, like, oh, how many sacks did this guy have, right? Sometimes it's not about the sacks. We also need to be able to get after the quarterback as well. And Yannick Nagy is a true pass rushing specialist. So I guess I'm not going to ignore the fact that he's not good against the run, right? He's a liability against the run. But I do understand that when it comes to his sack numbers and getting after the quarterback, he does that at a high level. And the good thing about Yannick Nagy that he is still only 28 years old, which is the youngest of the available pass rushers, the best available pass rushers in the market right now. So I totally wouldn't mind bringing Yannick Nagy into Chicago, maybe for another 2-year deal, and seeing what he can offer to the Chicago Bears defensive line. Number 3 on my list is Frank Clark. Obviously, Ryan Poles has familiarity with Clark from his time in Kansas City. The good thing about Clark, he is 29 years old. And the one thing I do want to mention about Clark, and I know I just mentioned this with the Yannick Nagy thing, the sack numbers are not quite there, right? He only had 5 sacks last season, but this is a guy that knows how to actually get after the quarterback. He generated accumulated 56 pressures last season. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you don't get the sack numbers that you want, but this is a guy that's constantly in the backfield and getting after the quarterback, and basically his other teammates finish up the job. So I do like that fact that he's a relentless pass rusher. So I do like that. I do like he's 29 years old. All in all, I do think adding Frank Clark would be a solid option for the Bears. This may be more of an expensive option for the Chicago Bears. It may be more like a 1-year deal, maybe for like $10+ million. So I'm not sure if Ryan Poles wants to go down that route. And another thing you have to consider about Clark, he did have some off-field issues last year. I believe he got suspended for 2 games. And I know that Ryan Poles is trying his best to stay away from guys that get in trouble and had to have the off-field issues, right? That's one of the reasons why they didn't go after Jalen Carter, because of those off-field issues. So I'm not sure if Ryan Poles would want a guy like Frank Clark, but all in all, Ryan Poles does know what Frank Clark is about. He knows the type of guy he is. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if as we get closer to the season, if Frank Clark actually signs a little deal to come to Chicago. Number 4 on my list, and I want you guys to hear me out, it is Justin Houston. And I know that he is 34 years old, but just wait 1 second and hear me out before you guys blast me in the comment section. Poles, first things first. Ryan Poles also has familiarity with Houston from his time in Kansas City. He is also coming off his best season since 2019. He had 9.5 sacks this season. Plus, he also played under Matt Eberflus when he was with the Colts in 2019 and 2020. And check this out, Bears fans. In those 2 seasons under Matt Eberflus, he combined for 19 sacks, right? So obviously he was highly productive. You know, he is on the older side. I still feel like he has a lot left in the tank. So the familiarity is definitely there with Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. And I know that he doesn't really fit the rebuild scheme, but it could be one of those options where it's like, okay, bring him in on a cheap deal, right? He's that vested veteran that can groom, like a Dominic Robinson, that can groom a Travis Gibson, right? But also be productive at the same time. Maybe it's just a 1-year option where he can be productive, and then maybe we add a edge rusher in next year's draft. We do have 2 first-round picks in next year's NFL draft. And I do think that he does have a little left in the tank. So I think a 1-year deal, bringing him to Chicago, wouldn't hurt at all. The last person on my list, and this is basically kind of a wild card here, and that is Chase Young. Obviously, the Washington Commanders declined Chase Young's 5th-year option, and that basically caused a whole bunch of rumors of what they would actually do with Chase Young. Will they trade him? Will they let him play out the season? Will they cut him? No one really knows what's going to happen with Chase Young. All in all, Chase Young is 24 years old. Obviously, he came in his rookie year, had 7.5 sacks, had a really high ceiling, but then injuries has basically derailed his career so far. But I would personally take a chance on Chase Young. Once again, he's still only 24 years old. I think he definitely has a lot left in the tank. The one big thing is, are you concerned about those injuries? And which it is a true concern. You don't want to give up picks on a guy, and then he comes in and gets hurt here in Chicago. But that's a risk you take when any player that you sign, right? But this is obviously the wild card. I think this may be the least likely option. I think the Washington Commanders will let him play out right this year and see what he does. If he performs well, they'll probably re-sign him. If he doesn't perform well, then he'll hit the open market. By that time, Bears can choose or not to bring him to Chicago. But if the Commanders are looking to trade Chase Young, I would possibly be curious if I was Ryan Poles. I would inquire about Chase Young and see how much it would cost. At this point, maybe a 2nd-round pick, maybe a 3rd-round pick, maybe you combine a 3rd and a 4th-round pick to bring Chase Young to Chicago. But that is a risk that I'm willing to take, knowing that he's still only 24 years old. And yes, I would be concerned about the injuries, but I think it's worth the risk, especially knowing that you have a huge hole at edge rusher. And I feel like this could be a really a high risk, but also a high reward type of move for the Chicago Bears. So Bears fans, those are the 5 guys that if I were Ryan Poles, I would be curious in to bring to Chicago to fill that edge void that we have on the roster. Like always, let me ask you guys this again. Do you guys agree with my list of players? And also, what other players are out there that you would like to see the Chicago Bears consider to fill that edge void that we have on the Chicago Bears roster? Before I let you guys go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Kick on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, back for all new Bears podcasts right here on Kick on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on on the mic.